What happens when a black man is humiliated in a store just for existing? They thought Leroy was nobody, but his comeback left them speechless. Join us by subscribing to hear powerful stories of justice and triumph. You ever notice how doing the right thing can land you in a world of trouble? That's my life in a nutshell. I'm Leroy Wilson, 58 years young, and on that sweltering August morning, I was just trying to get through the day with my coffee buzz and a bag of fresh rolls from the bakery. My old jacket, worn but proud, smelled of yesterday's cologne, and I was whistling some Marvin Gaye, feeling like the world might just let me be for once. Then I saw her, Mrs. Clare, the 80-year-old legend who could out-hustle half the town, struggling with 2 grocery bags bigger than her willpower. Apples were spilling onto the sidewalk like they were making a break for it, and nobody stopped to help. Typical. People too busy staring at their phones to see a woman in need. I didn't think twice. I jogged over, dodging a rogue apple, and said, "Mrs. Clare, let me handle this before you start a fruit riot." She laughed, her eyes twinkling like she saw the boy I used to be. "Leroy, you're a blessing," she said, patting my arm. I scooped up her groceries, hauled them to her rusty Chevy, and made sure every bag was secure. We chatted about the price of eggs, her grandson in college, and the drought that had the town praying for rain. When she handed me a crumpled candy from her pocket, I felt like I'd won a medal. I waved as she drove off, honking like she was leading a parade. Then it all went sideways. As I turned to head home, I noticed my wallet, my beat-up, leather lifeline, had slipped out while I was playing Apple Wrangler. It lay open on the sidewalk, my ID and a couple of 20s peeking out. I bent to grab it, and that's when I heard the voice that made my blood run cold. "Hey, you! What are you stealing?" I straightened up and faced him, a 30-something white guy in a checkered shirt, eyes narrowed like he'd caught me robbing a bank. His girlfriend, clutching his arm, glared at me like I was the devil himself. A few passers-by slowed down, sniffing drama in the air. "Here we go again. Stealing," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my insides were boiling. "This is my wallet, man." I dropped it. "Yeah, right," he sneered, crossing his arms. "I saw you snooping around. Think I'm blind?" I felt my pulse hammer in my temples. I've been here before, too many times. The accusations, the assumptions, the way they look at you like you're less than human. I held up the wallet, showing my ID. My picture, my name, my cards. "Want a check?" He didn't even glance at it. "You people always have an excuse," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. His girlfriend, Miss Hollywood with her overdone lipstick, pulled out her phone. "We should call the cops," she said, already dialing. The crowd grew, whispering, filming, judging. I was no longer Leroy Wilson, the guy who helped Mrs. Clare. I was just a black man who looked suspicious. "You people, huh?" Those words hit like a slap. I wanted to scream, to tell them I pay my taxes, go to church, and love my coffee with 2 sugars. But I knew better. When they've already decided who you are, words don't matter. I stuffed the wallet in my pocket and said, "Do what you gotta do. I'm going home." Checkered shirt grabbed my shoulder like I was his property. I shook him off, and he yelled, "Don't touch me, thief." The crowd gasped, eating it up. I saw phones raised, capturing every second. This wasn't about a wallet anymore. This was about me, my skin, my existence. And they were ready to make me pay for it. What happened next flipped the script. You won't want to miss how this unfolded. Standing there, surrounded by a crowd that had already convicted me, I felt like a caged lion. Checkered shirt, let's call him Mr. Know-It-All, was shouting like I'd stolen his mama's heirlooms, not picked up my own wallet. Miss Hollywood was filming, her phone aimed at me like a gun, narrating to her audience, "This guy tried to steal something right in front of us." The crowd buzzed, some nodding, others whispering. An old white guy nearby muttered, "Always causing trouble." I wanted to grab him by his collar and say, "Who's always, huh? You don't know me." But I held it together. Barely. I locked eyes with Mr. Know-It-All. "I'm not a thief," I said, slow and deliberate. "This is my wallet. My ID's right here." I held it up again, my face staring back from the driver's license. He scoffed, waving it off. "That proves nothing. You probably stole that too." I laughed, a bitter, jagged sound. "Stole my own ID. Man, you're reaching." But he wasn't listening. Miss Hollywood was on the phone with the cops, saying, "Yeah, there's this black guy causing a scene. We caught him in the act." Caught me? I was standing still, minding my business, while they played judge and jury. Then the police rolled up. 2 white officers stepped out, their faces blank but their eyes already sizing me up. The older one, with a mustache like he moonlighted as a cowboy, barked, "Name." "Leroy Wilson," I said, keeping my hands visible. "This is my wallet. I dropped it, and this guy thinks I'm a criminal." Mr. Know-It-All jumped in, pointing at me. "He was digging around on the ground, officer. I saw him trying to hide something." Hide something? I was ready to lose it, but I bit my tongue. I knew how this worked. One wrong move, and I'd be in cuffs, or worse. I handed over my ID, but Mustache didn't even look at it. Instead, he nodded to his partner, a skinny kid who looked like he'd just graduated high school. Skinny started patting me down right there on the street, in front of everyone. His hands rifled through my pockets, pulling out Mrs. Claire's candy, my keys, a crumpled receipt. The crowd watched like it was a reality show. "This all you got?" Skinny asked, tossing the candy back at me. "What, you want my grocery list too?" I shot back, my sarcasm barely hiding my rage. Mustache didn't crack a smile. He turned to Mr. Know-It-All. "You sure you saw him stealing?" "Positive," Mr. Know-It-All said, puffing out his chest. "Guys like him are always up to something." There it was again, guys like him. My fists clenched, but I forced myself to breathe. "Not here, Leroy. Not now." Mustache looked at me like I was a problem he didn't feel like solving. "Let's take this to the station," he said, grabbing my arm. "Station?" I repeated, my voice rising. "For picking up my wallet?" But they weren't listening. Skinny opened the squad car's back door, and the crowd, Lord help me, started clapping. Clapping. Like they'd just nabbed a serial killer. Miss Hollywood kept filming, probably dreaming of viral fame. Mr. Know-It-All smirked, thinking he'd won. I slid into the car, my heart pounding, not from fear but from a fury so deep it felt like it could burn the world down. This wasn't about a wallet. This was about my skin, my pride, my right to exist. And they thought they could take it all away. This was just the spark. Stick around for the fire that came next. The police station smelled like stale coffee and despair. They stuck me in a gray interrogation room with a table that wobbled and a chair that creaked like it was older than me. Mustache sat across from me, flipping through a notepad like he was auditioning for a cop show. Skinny leaned against the door, arms crossed, watching me like I might pull a rabbit out of my hat. My wallet sat on the table, my life laid bare, my ID, my credit cards, a faded photo of my late wife, Sarah. Mustache picked up the photo, his fingers smudging her smile, and I felt a stab in my chest. "Put that down," I said, my voice low but sharp. He ignored me. "Tell me what happened," Mustache said, not looking up. I took a deep breath, trying to keep the volcano inside from erupting. "I helped an old lady with her groceries. Dropped my wallet. Picked it up. Then that clown in the checkered shirt decided I was a thief. That's it." He raised an eyebrow, like I'd just spun a fairy tale. "Any witnesses to back you up?" "Mrs. Claire," I said. "She saw me helping her. she'll tell you I'm no thief. But I could tell he wasn't about to call her. He leaned back, tossing my wallet on the table. You got a history of causing trouble, Leroy. I laughed, cold and hard. Trouble? Yeah, I cause trouble by existing. You got a file on that? Skinny snorted, but Mustache just stared. He started asking questions, each one dripping with suspicion. Where was I before the incident? Why was I snooping on the ground? What was I doing in that part of town? I answered, but it was like talking to a wall. They'd already decided who I was. An hour later, they let me go, not because they believed me, but because they had nothing to pin on me. Mustache handed back my wallet, minus my 20s, saying they were held for evidence. Evidence of what? My audacity to be black. I walked out, the evening air hitting me like a slap. My rolls were long gone, probably trampled on the sidewalk. My pride felt trampled too. When I got home, I collapsed on my couch, staring at the ceiling. The silence was deafening. I pulled out Sarah's photo, the one Mustache had touched, and my chest tightened. Sarah, my rock, gone 5 years now. I remembered our 20th anniversary, how we'd saved up for a fancy dinner downtown. The hostess took one look at us and said, "Sorry, we're fully booked." The place was half empty. Sarah held my hand, her eyes wet but her chin high, whispering, "We're better than them, Leroy." She never let them see her break, but that night, when we got home, she cried in my arms. I held her, promising we'd rise above it. Now, alone, I felt that promise slipping. The weight of it all, the stares, the accusations, the system, pressed down so hard I could barely breathe. I wasn't a superhero. I was just a man, and for a moment, I felt like I might crack. But then I heard Sarah's voice in my head, "Keep your head up, Leroy. They can't take your soul." I kissed her photo and stood. No, I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. This was the moment it all changed. You gotta see what I did next. The next morning, I woke up with a fire in my belly. That weight from last night? Still there, but now it fueled me. I brewed my coffee, 2 sugars, and stared at Sarah's photo on the mantel. "This one's for you, baby," I said, slipping on my jacket, the one that carried me through yesterday's mess. I wasn't just Leroy Wilson, the guy who loved Marvin Gaye and helped old ladies. I was Leroy Wilson, entrepreneur, owner of Wilson Investments, a man who'd built a quiet empire in this town. And I was done letting people walk over me. I headed to Baker's, the big box store on Main Street, the kind of place that sold everything from TVs to dreams of a better life. I'd been there 100 times, but today felt different. The air inside was thick with the smell of plastic and cheap cologne. Employees glanced at me, their eyes lingering a second too long. I made my way to the electronics section, looking for Tony, the one clerk who always treated me like a person. No Tony. Instead, I got Karen, 40-ish, tight bun, face like she'd sucked a lemon. Her badge screamed, "Trouble." "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone saying she'd rather be anywhere else. "Looking for a TV," I said, keeping it cool. "Something nice for my living room." She eyed me like I'd asked for the moon. "Those are expensive," she said, dragging out the word like I couldn't afford it. My blood simmered. I'd seen that look before, same one I got at that restaurant with Sarah. "Money's not an issue," I said, locking eyes with her. "Show me the best." She muttered under her breath, "I knew people like him would be trouble." Oh, she thought I didn't hear. I heard every syllable. She half-heartedly pointed at a row of TVs, then turned to gossip with another clerk about someone's late shift. I cleared my throat, and she whipped around, snapping, "What? You picked one yet?" I stepped closer, voice low but firm. "I asked for help, not a sideshow. You gonna do your job or what?" Her eyes narrowed, and I knew I'd crossed her invisible line. Listen, she hissed, if you're not buying, don't waste my time. We've got enough problems without you stirring things up. Stirring things up. That was it. I felt Sarah's strength in me, her voice saying, don't let them win. I smiled, but it was the kind of smile that makes people nervous. Problems, huh? Trust me, lady, mine are bigger. Call your manager. Karen's face turned beet red. You don't get to demand anything, she spat, but before she could keep going, a guy in a cheap suit, badge reading, Jason, manager, walked over. What's going on? He asked, looking between Karen's scowl and my clenched fists. Karen launched into her version, this man's being rude. I tried to help, and he got aggressive. Aggressive? I laughed, sharp and loud. Rude? I asked for a TV. That's a crime now. Jason sighed, clearly wishing he was on a lunch break. Sir, let's keep this civil. If you can't, I'll have to ask you to leave. Leave. That word again. I felt the room spin, not from fear but from a lifetime of being told to know my place. I wasn't leaving. Not today. Not ever. This was where I drew the line. Stay tuned for what I unleashed. I stood my ground in Baker's, Karen glaring like she wanted to burn a hole through me, Jason fidgeting like a kid caught in a lie. The shoppers around us were starting to notice, their whispers like static in the air. I wasn't just fighting for a TV anymore. I was fighting for every time I'd been pushed aside, every time Sarah and I had been told, no, for no reason but our skin. Get me your boss, I said to Jason, my voice steady as steel. Not you. The big one. Karen scoffed. The regional director. He won't waste his time on you. She leaned in, muttering, people like you always think they're special. There it was again, people like you. I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought of people like her, but I held back. I had a bigger plan. Jason hesitated, then mumbled into his radio. Minutes later, a man in a sharp suit strode in, gray at the temples, badge reading, Richard, regional director. He looked at the scene, at Karen's flushed face, at my unwavering stare, and asked, what's the problem here? Karen started her sob story, painting me as the villain. I let her finish, then told my side, the wallet incident, the police, Karen's attitude, the whole rotten system that made me a target. I didn't yell, but every word landed like a punch. Richard's face tightened, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, maybe guilt, maybe fear. As I spoke, a voice piped up from behind me. He's telling the truth. I turned to see a black woman, maybe 60, in a baker's uniform, holding a mop. Her badge read Evelyn. She stepped forward, her voice steady. I've seen Karen treat customers like him before. Black folks, mostly. She acts like they don't belong. I've kept quiet too long. The air shifted. Shoppers murmured, some nodding. Karen's jaw dropped, and Jason looked like he wanted to disappear. Richard turned to Evelyn, surprised. You've seen this before? Yes, sir, Evelyn said, chin high. And I'm done staying silent. I felt a warmth in my chest, like Sarah was smiling down on me. Evelyn wasn't just a bystander, she was my sister in this fight. Richard cleared his throat. Mr. Wilson, I'm sorry for the trouble. We'll investigate this thoroughly. Investigate? I said, my sarcasm sharp. You think a report's gonna fix this? This ain't about Karen. It's about a system that lets her think she can treat me like dirt. I want answers, Richard. And I want them now. He nodded, promising a private meeting in his office. As I walked away, Evelyn caught my eye and gave me a small nod. I nodded back. This wasn't just my battle anymore. My community was rising with me. That night, I went to my usual diner, expecting the same old routine. But the waitress, a white woman who'd always been cold to me, smiled and said, Mr. Wilson, coffee's on the house tonight. I saw you on the news. Keep fighting. I froze, then grinned. A small win, but it felt like gold. This was just the beginning. You won't believe what I did to shake this town. Richard's office was all glass and paperwork, smelling of ink and ambition. He sat across from me, hands folded, trying to play the "we're all friends" card. Karen and Jason were outside, whispering like kids caught cheating on a test. I leaned back in my chair, ready to make him sweat. "Mr. Wilson," Richard started, "I understand you're upset. Let's find a way to move forward." I raised an eyebrow. "Move forward? You think I'm here for a handshake and a pat on the back? I'm here because your store, your city, your whole system's been stomping on people like me for too long. I'm done playing nice." He shifted, uncomfortable. "Good." I kept going. "Yesterday, I got dragged to the station over my own wallet. Today, your employee Karen decided I'm not worth her time because of my skin. This ain't a one-off, Richard. This is my life. And I'm betting it's the life of every black person who walks through your doors." Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Rita, my assistant, texting me a link. I glanced at it, a local news article about Mustache, the cop who'd hauled me in. Turns out, he had a file thicker than a Bible, full of complaints from black folks stopped for looking suspicious. The city had buried it. I felt my blood boil, but I kept my cool. I slid my phone across the desk. "Read this," I said. Richard scanned the article, his face paling. "That's the cop who thought my wallet was a felony. You want to talk about moving forward? Start with cleaning up your city's mess." He stammered, promising to look into it. But I wasn't done. I told him about the stats I'd found. Over 60% of police stops in our town targeted black people, despite us being less than 20% of the population. I saw his eyes widen, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. This wasn't just about bakers. This was about a system that thrived on keeping us down. As I left, I passed Karen in the hall. She muttered, "This is why we don't need people like you here." I stopped, turned, and smiled. "Keep talking, Karen. You're making my case for me." She shut up real quick. That evening, I stopped by the barber shop, where my old friend Reverend Thomas was getting a trim. He clapped me on the back and said, "Leroy, I knew you back when you were sneaking candy from the church pantry. You always fought for what's right. We're with you, brother." His words hit deep, reminding me I wasn't alone. The barbershop crew, black men who'd seen it all, nodded in agreement, promising to spread the word. My fight was theirs now. This was the turning point. Stay with me for the explosion that followed. The fire was spreading, and I was fanning the flames. My story hit the local news, and suddenly, I wasn't just Leroy Wilson, I was the guy who took on bakers and won. But I wasn't after fame. I was after change. I called a meeting at the community center, expecting a few folks to show up. By 6 p.m., the place was packed, black, white, young, old, all there because they'd seen the video of me and Mr. Know-It-All, read about Karen, heard about Mustache's rap sheet. I stood at the front, no suit, just my old jacket, and spoke from the heart. I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who's tired. Tired of proving I'm not a thief, not a thug, not a problem. But I know I'm not alone. You're here because you're tired too. Tired of the stares, the stops, the "you don't belong." So let's do something about it. The room erupted. A woman, Miss Bernice, stood up, her voice shaking but strong. I lost my job because I called out my boss for treating black customers like trash. Leroy, you're giving me hope. A young Latino kid shared how cops hassled him for skateboarding in his own neighborhood. Then Reverend Thomas took the mic, his deep voice filling the room. I've known Leroy since he was a boy, always standing up for justice. He's our brother, and this fight is ours. The crowd cheered, and I felt Sarah's spirit in the room, lifting me up. We started planning. Not just protests, those burn out. We formed Wilson's Voice, a group to hold stores, cops, and politicians accountable. Evelyn from Baker's joined us, sharing how Karen had bullied black customers for years. "I stayed quiet to keep my job," she said. "No more." Her courage lit a spark, and others stepped up, offering money, time, skills. As I left, a white guy from the crowd approached, head down. "I was in that crowd when that jerk accused you." I didn't speak up. "I'm sorry." I shook his hand. "You're here now. That's what counts." Another small win, and it felt like the world was starting to shift. This wasn't just a fight. It was a movement. You gotta see what we did next. The lawsuit against Baker's was moving fast. My lawyer, Tom, was a shark, digging up dirt on their shady practices. But I wasn't stopping there. I met with City Hall, this time with Reverend Thomas and Evelyn by my side. The suits, led by a nervous guy named Green, tried to smooth things over with talk of task forces. I cut them off, my voice like thunder. "Task forces? I want action. Train your cops. Fix your stores. Make this city safe for my grandkids." Green squirmed, but I felt their fear. They knew Wilson's Voice wasn't playing. I laid out the stats: 60% of stops targeting black folks, Mustache's complaint file, the works. Reverend Thomas added, "This city's been ignoring us for too long. Leroy's shown us we can fight back." Evelyn nodded, her presence a quiet but powerful force. We walked out with promises of reform, but I wasn't holding my breath. I kept pushing: interviews, rallies, petitions. One day, I walked into Baker's and saw a new face at the counter, a young black woman who smiled and said, "Mr. Wilson, thank you. I got this job because of you." Karen was gone, fired after Evelyn's testimony. Richard sent a personal apology, but I didn't care. The real win was that new hire, that smile, that change. At home, I sat with Sarah's photo, my heart heavy. I remembered the nights we'd lie awake, talking about a world where our kids wouldn't face this pain. I wasn't there yet, but I was closer. I whispered, "We're doing it, baby." For a moment, I felt her hand on mine. This was the revolution. Stick around for the legacy we built. The town was buzzing like a beehive kicked over, and I, Leroy Wilson, was the one holding the stick. At 58, I thought I'd seen it all, but these past weeks proved me wrong. Wilson's Voice wasn't just a name anymore, it was a roar, echoing from barbershops to church pews. My fight with Baker's had cracked open something bigger, and folks were waking up. But let me tell you, standing at the center of that storm didn't feel like victory. It felt like carrying a mountain on my back, and some nights, I wasn't sure I could keep going. I was at home, my coffee gone cold, staring at Sarah's photo on the mantel. Her smile was my lighthouse, but the waves were crashing hard. I remembered a day, maybe 10 years back, when we tried to rent a house in a nice neighborhood. The landlord took one look at us, two black folks with steady jobs and a dream, and said, "This place ain't for you." Sarah kept her cool, but later, in our car, she broke down, her voice shaking. "Why do we always have to fight, Leroy?" That question haunted me now. I touched her photo, my fingers trembling. "Sarah, I'm trying," I whispered. "But this weight, it's heavy." For a moment, I felt like I might crumble, not from fear but from the sheer exhaustion of being seen as less than human my whole life. A knock at the door snapped me out of it. It was Reverend Thomas, his gray suit crisp, his eyes warm like a father's. "Leroy, you hiding from the world or just your coffee?" he teased, stepping inside. I managed a laugh, pouring him a cup. "Just trying to keep my head on straight, Rev." He sat, his gaze steady. "You're doing more than that, brother. You're waking this town up." But you don't have to carry it alone. His words hit deep, reminding me of the community rallying behind me. He told me about a meeting at the community center tomorrow. Folks from all over wanted to join Wilson's voice. Evelyn's bringing her cousin, and Lorraine's closing her diner early to be there, he said. We're your army, Leroy. I nodded, grateful but still raw. Rev, what if it's not enough? What if they keep shutting us out? He put a hand on my shoulder. Then we keep pushing. Like you always have. The next day, the community center was packed, black faces, brown faces, even a few white ones, all there because they'd seen the news, heard about bakers, felt the fire. I stood at the front, my coffee mug in hand, and spoke from the gut. This ain't just about me or a wallet. It's about every time we've been told we don't belong. I'm tired of it, and I know you are too. So let's make them hear us. The room erupted, and Miss Bernice, a retired nurse with a voice like thunder, stood up. Leroy, I got fired for calling out my boss when he ignored black patients. You're giving us a voice, and I'm all in. Then Evelyn, the baker's janitor, spoke, her hands steady despite her nerves. I saw Karen treat black customers like garbage for years. I stayed quiet to keep my job, but no more. I'm with you, Leroy. Her cousin, Tanya, a schoolteacher, added, my students, black kids, get suspended for nothing. We need Wilson's voice in our schools. The crowd cheered, and I felt Sarah's strength in their words. This was our fight, our family. But the system wasn't sleeping. I'd gotten my hands on more dirt, a city report showing black residents were 3 times more likely to be stopped by cops than white folks, even for minor stuff like jaywalking. Mustache, that cop who'd hauled me in, had a dozen complaints, all buried. I shared it with the room, and the anger was palpable. Reverend Thomas stood, his voice booming. Leroy's shining a light on their shame. We won't let them hide it anymore. As we planned, petitions, rallies, a push for police oversight, a white woman in the back raised her hand. I'm Ellen. I was at Baker's when Karen went off on you. I didn't say nothing, and I'm ashamed. I want to help. The room went quiet, then Bernice clapped, and others joined. I nodded at Ellen. Welcome aboard. We need every voice. It was a small win, a sign the tide was turning, but I knew the system wouldn't go down easy. That night, I stopped by Lorraine's diner for a quick bite. She slid a plate of peach cobbler my way, grinning. On the house, Leroy. You're making us proud. A black couple at the counter raised their glasses. To Leroy, who's showing, we ain't invisible. I smiled, my heart lifting. These moments, these people, they were why I kept fighting. But as I walked home, I saw a new post from Mr. Know-It-All online, whining that I'd ruined his life with my lies. He claimed he'd just been protecting the community. I laughed, but it was cold. Guys like him never learn, but I was ready to teach them. I poured a fresh coffee, sat back, and thought of Sarah. We're just getting started, baby. The fire's raging now. You won't believe how we turned this town upside down. The air in this town was different now, like the calm before a hurricane. My name, Leroy Wilson, was on everyone's lips, some spoke it with pride, others with venom. Wilson's voice wasn't just a group anymore, it was a movement, and I was riding the wave, fueled by every injustice I'd faced in my 58 years. But let me tell you, carrying that weight ain't easy. Every night, I'd sit in my living room, the silence pressing down, and stare at Sarah's photo on the mantel. Her smile was my anchor, but some nights, it felt like I was drowning. I'd think about that restaurant on our anniversary, how they turned us away, how Sarah held her tears until we were alone. They can't break us, Leroy, she'd said, but that night, I saw the cracks in her strength. Now, carrying her legacy, I felt those cracks in myself. I wasn't unbreakable, and the fight was taking its toll. One evening, I was at the community center, planning our next steps with Reverend Thomas, Evelyn, and a new ally, Miss Lorraine, a 60-year-old firecracker who ran the local soul food joint. She'd seen it all, cops harassing her customers, landlords jacking up rent on black businesses. "Leroy," she said, slamming a plate of cornbread on the table, "you stirred up the hornet's nest, and we're with you. But they're gonna sting back." Her words hit hard, but her presence, alongside Evelyn's quiet resolve and Reverend Thomas's booming faith, reminded me I wasn't alone. We got a tip from a City Hall insider. Mustache, the cop who dragged me in, wasn't just a bad apple, he was part of a pattern. A leaked report showed over a dozen complaints against him, all from black folks, all swept under the rug. I sat with that report, my coffee going cold, and felt a rage so deep it scared me. This wasn't just about me. It was about every brother and sister who'd been profiled, humiliated, silenced. I called Tom, my lawyer, and said, "We're not just suing bakers. We're going after the police department. This ends now." Tom hesitated. "Leroy, that's a big swing." "You sure?" I looked at Sarah's photo across the room and said, "I've never been sure." We filed a class action lawsuit, representing every name in that report. The news hit like a bomb, local stations ran stories about Leroy Wilson versus the system, and my phone didn't stop buzzing. Some called me a hero, others left voicemails promising I'd regret it. One guy, his voice thick with hate, said, "You're gonna learn your place, Wilson." I laughed, bitter and bold. "Come find me, pal. I'm at the diner every morning." The next day, I walked into Lorraine's soul food spot, expecting a quick coffee. Instead, the place was packed, black folks from all over town, clapping as I entered. Lorraine hugged me, her apron smelling of fried chicken. "Leroy, this one's on me," she said, sliding a plate of collards and cornbread my way. A young brother at the counter, maybe 20, stood and said, "Mr. Wilson, my dad got stopped by that same cop. Thank you for fighting." I nodded, my throat tight. These were my people, my strength. Small victories like this kept me going, but I knew the real battle was just heating up. This was only the warm-up. You won't want to miss the chaos that came next. The lawsuit against the police department sent shockwaves, and the backlash came fast. I was at the barbershop, getting a trim from my old friend Marcus, when he showed me a social media post from none other than Mr. Know-It-All, the checkered shirt clown who started this mess. He'd written a long rant, claiming he was the real victim, saying I'd threatened him and was playing the race card to scam the city. The comments were a war zone, some defending me, others calling me every name in the book. Marcus shook his head, clipping my hair. "Leroy, this fool's digging his own grave. Keep pushing." I smirked, but inside, it stung. Not because I cared what Mr. Know-It-All thought, but because his words echoed the whispers I'd heard my whole life. I remembered a night with Sarah, years back, when we were denied a hotel room on a road trip. No vacancies, the clerk said, but we saw white folks checking in behind us. Sarah squeezed my hand, her voice steady, "Don't let them see you flinch." But when we got to our car, I saw the hurt in her eyes, and it broke me. Now, reading that post, I felt that same ache. I wasn't just fighting for me, I was fighting for her, for every moment they tried to erase us. The City Hall meeting came a week later, and I walked in with Reverend Thomas, Evelyn, and Lorraine, my crew stronger than ever. Green, the nervous suit, was there, flanked by 2 council members who looked like they'd rather be golfing. Green tried his usual spiel, "We're committed to progress, but we need time." I cut him off, my voice like a blade. "Time. My people have been waiting 400 years. Train your cops, fire the bad ones, and open the complaint file on Mustache. Or Wilson's voice will make sure this city hears us loud and clear." Reverend Thomas stood, his presence filling the room. "Leroy speaks for us all. I've watched this town ignore our pain for decades. No more." Lorraine added, "My customers are scared to walk home at night because of cops like that. Fix it, or we'll fix it ourselves. Green's face went pale, and I felt their fear. They knew we weren't bluffing. As we left, a white councilwoman pulled me aside, her voice low. "Mr. Wilson, I was at Baker's that day. I didn't speak up. I'm sorry." I looked at her, seeing genuine shame. "Make it right," I said. "Support our reforms." She nodded, and I felt another small win, a crack in the system's armor. That night, I sat alone, Sarah's photo in my hands. I thought about our first date, how we danced to Marvin Gaye under the stars, ignoring the glares from passers-by. I thought about the times I wanted to give up, to let the world win. My eyes stung, and for a moment, I let the tears come. "Sarah, this is heavy," I whispered. "But I'm still fighting." Her smile in that photo gave me the strength to keep going. "The storm's getting wilder. You gotta see how we turned the tide." 6 months later, Wilson's voice was unstoppable. The lawsuit against Baker's ended with a hefty settlement, new training programs, and Karen's termination. The police department case was tougher, but we won, Mustache was fired, and the city agreed to independent oversight of complaints. We set up scholarships for black kids, a hotline for discrimination reports, and workshops in schools to teach respect. The town wasn't fixed, but it was moving. I walked into Lorraine's diner one evening, and the place exploded with cheers. Black folks, white folks, Latinos, everyone was there, raising glasses to me. Lorraine hugged me, saying, "Leroy, you're our hero." I shook my head. "Nah, we're all heroes. This is our fight." A kid, maybe 10, ran up, holding a drawing of me in my jacket, labeled, "Mr. Wilson, our voice." I knelt down, my heart full. "This for your grandkids," I told him, thinking of my own. A white woman at the counter, the same one who'd once ignored me, came over. "Mr. Wilson, I was wrong about you. Thank you for opening my eyes." I nodded, feeling the world shift, one heart at a time. At home, I sat with Sarah's photo, Marvin Gaye playing softly. I thought of Mrs. Clare, Evelyn, Reverend Thomas, Lorraine, my family, my strength. I thought of every moment they tried to break us, and how we rose stronger. "We did it, baby," I said, kissing her picture. "And we ain't done." I stepped outside, coffee in hand, and looked at the stars. This town, this world, had heard Leroy Wilson. And we were just getting started. This ain't the end. It's a revolution. Stay with us to see how we keep changing the game.